We ended the second chapter of Ruth with the beginnings of a plan. Naomi has just learned that Ruth has found favor and protection from her relative Boaz, and now needs to hatch a plan to get this potential next of kin redeemer to agree to marry Ruth. This plan unfurls at a somewhat unfamiliar place for us living in modern times, a place called a threshing floor. Now that the wheat and the barley have been harvested, the grain has to be threshed, or literally beaten or trampled to separate the grain from its hulls, and then winnowed by being literally thrown up into the air so the wind could blow the husks away. This whole process took place on a threshing floor, a high-level area outside of town. It's here that Ruth comes to find Boaz asleep after probably having a little bit too much to drink after celebrating the harvest. This chapter is ripe with cultural context, and much has been written about the subtleties of innuendo and the ancient cultural practices related to things like property, relationships, and sex. It's also full of hyperlinks that find parallel themes connecting stories throughout the biblical narrative. Take, for example, the plot of Lot's daughters in Genesis 19. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah has just happened, and after settling in a cave, the two daughters of Lot develop an elaborate scheme involving a sleeping man who has had too much to drink. As you're reading this chapter in Ruth, something's going to sound a little familiar. Another interesting connection to that story from Genesis, one of the sons that comes from that plot is named Moab. Does that name sound familiar? You guessed it. Moab was the father of the Moabites, from whom Ruth herself, our main character, is directly descended. Now, understanding and exploring these nuances is important, and you'll find rich detail there. But don't lose sight of the broader themes of covenant loyalty and God's providence working in ordinary lives among unlikely ordinary people in order to bring about His larger redemptive plan to bring all things, including you and me, unto Him through Jesus Christ our Lord.